Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. And in today's video we have this 2019 Ford Explorer, and we're going to do the lower side chrome delete installation for this vehicle. So as you can see, this is how it looks before doing the installation on the lower panels of the vehicle, and this is how it looks after the installation. So we use the gloss black material, that way it matches the look on the vehicle, and it also gives the vehicle a sportier look. If you like the product, link for the product will be in the description below. But with that being said, let's start with the installation video. So before starting with the installation, we need to make sure we prep the panel. So to prep it, you could apply water and baby shampoo onto a spray bottle and spray the solution onto your microfiber towel. You don't want to spray it directly onto the panel because you might wet it too much. Another option would be you can wash the vehicle, but if you do wash the vehicle, just make sure that everything is completely dry. We don't want any water left over that's coming from the edges or anywhere hidden, because if water gets on the adhesive side of the film, then the adhesive, it's not going to tack down to the panel. Even though you apply a lot of heat, it's not going to sit. So make sure the panel is completely dry before doing the installation, and clean the inside as well. Okay, so for this installation, it will be a three-piece method. So what I mean by three, it would be one piece that covers the edge side here of the chrome that's exposed on the middle section of the door, the piece that goes underneath here, which would be this one, and then the piece that goes on top of this section. So with this one, you can start by aligning it underneath here. So tack it down and just make sure as you go, you're covering all of the chrome underneath the film, because you want full coverage. So make sure cover everything underneath here. So we recommend just making sure you have full coverage and cover everything underneath the film, underneath the panel here. And if you need to lift and readjust, you can. Just make sure you don't accidentally tear the film, so lift the film carefully if you need to readjust it. And you just work your way until you reach to the other end. And when it comes to this curved area, we're just going to help the film tack down. So if you need to move it, to align it, you can. You're just working your way on how the design is. So you can use your finger to help it tack down. So it should look like this. And this is excess material. You could trim it off or try to tuck it in. Different options, but we recommend just trimming it off. That way it won't be in the way when you install the piece that goes here. So before we trim off any material, just make sure to tack down everything first. That way we know what will be extra material and what is not. So make sure everything feels flat, there's no fingers or anything, and remove all of the air bubbles behind the film. And same here, just make sure everything is flat before we trim off anything. And now with this one, just go ahead and trim off the excess material. So it's just going to be that piece that's popping out that you need to trim off. And it should just lay on top of the film like this. And then the side ones we could trim off here. Find a small gap between the panel and the plastic trim, and that's what you would trim off. So it should look like this. And then if you need to, apply heat here on this area to help tack down on the curve. But if you don't, and it sits perfectly fine, then you should be good. But it's always good to apply heat just to help the film tack down. And now we move on to this piece. With this one, it's going to be the same installation method as how we did it with the rear panel. If you check out that video, it shows you step by step on how to go about installing the film onto each letter. But I'll show you guys a quick example of how to go about it for each piece here. So when it comes to installing this top piece, make sure you align it on this curve here first. So just give yourself a little bit of excess material. That way it covers the top piece of the corner here. And then just make your way on installing the rest of the film. So it's pretty simple. Just make sure you're covering the chrome panel here as well. And now that we have this area flat, we're going to squeegee this piece first. So squeegee all of this just to secure it. Here, make sure to remove the air that's trapped inside this curve here. Okay, so the method that I was talking about for this section here, first is removing the air from the flatter areas. So make sure to remove all the air. And then the method that I was talking about is poking a hole on each of the edges of the lettering and anywhere else where you might have a small air bubble. That way you're able to help release the air that's trapped inside each letter while you're applying heat and moving your finger to tack it down. So I'll show you a quick example of how to go about with the E. Grab a needle or something pointy that you have that's able to poke a hole without damaging the film. So a sharp needle should be fine. So just poke a small hole on each of the corners. Once you insert it and made the puncture, grab your heat gun and start applying heat. Start from the area where we didn't puncture the vinyl and move the air towards where we punctured the vinyl. So as you can see, the vinyl was able to form to the lettering. So let's say another example would be if you don't puncture the holes, you might create air bubbles in the middle of the lettering. So let me show you how it may look on the X if you don't puncture the holes. So let's say you're applying heat and you try to tack it down. If you already notice, you create an air bubble right there in this section here. You could go about by installing it like that. If you do go with this method, you're gonna have air bubbles, and to remove them, you're still going to need the needle. So just poke a hole right on the edge where the bubble is at, apply a little bit of heat, and help release all that air towards where we did the cut. So that's why it's recommended to always puncture the hole first and then apply heat to tack it down, because you might have a lot of bubbles and we want to avoid that. And yeah, it's just rinse and repeating each one until you finish to the last one. And then once you're done with all of them, we continue on with tacking down the rest of the film. Okay, now that we're done, we're just going to finish off with the rest of the installation. So just make sure you remove any air that's trapped behind this curve here. And since we already have the needle, if you do have a bubble trap, just puncture it and remove the air. And just finish off tacking down the rest. And any excess material will get trimmed off. And it's just rinse and repeating until you finish the installation. With this one, you might need to remove the film just a bit and help it tack down to the curve. So apply heat, let it cool off, and then tack it down. And just continue on with the rest of the film. And then once you're done, the last thing to do would be trim off the excess material. So we have excess material here on the edges, and you might have some underneath. So just look around the areas where you might have the excess material, and just with your blade, start anywhere. Just make sure you find the gap and trim off that excess material. So this is roughly where we stopped. So just continue where we left off. And trim it off on the sides. So we might need to open the door for this piece since we still have to install the piece that goes inside. So trim off the excess material that's on this edge here. So find the small gap and trim it off. And same here on the bottom since we didn't trim it off in the beginning. And now to install the last piece, it would be for this section here. So just align it where we left off, just to cover the piece. And that's pretty much it. And basically the same steps that we did for this panel, you would just rinse and repeat for this one. The only thing about the rear is just we don't have the lettering, so that's the easier part. So just install the bottom piece first, finish it off with the top, make sure to install the side one, and then after we install it, trim off everything, we post heat both panels once we're done. So the last thing to do, like I mentioned, once you finish with the whole installation, it would be post heating. So the reason for post heating is just to help the adhesive activate faster onto the panel. That way it sticks and it doesn't lift over time. And also we're helping the film stay in the form of how we installed it, and it doesn't tend to lift over time. Once you're done post heating everything, then you're done with the installation. Okay, so that concludes the installation video for the side Chrome Delete installation for the 2019 Ford Explorer. We hope that this video helped you guys out with the installation. If it did, don't forget to drop a like on the video. Make sure you subscribe and turn on that notification bell. That way you don't miss any upcoming installation videos. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.